The Hollywood Dream Factory has been creating the image of the perfect female spy for decades, a femme fatale beauty capable of seducing anyone with perfect hairstyle, steady hand, and exceptional mastery of martial arts. Each of them is a mixture of invulnerability, sex appeal, and perfection. However, the reality is much more prosaic, but no less exciting. The real women in the intelligence world were not militant heroes, but ordinary people who had been turned into invisible soldiers by circumstances or deep convictions. They used not only beauty and seduction, but also intelligence, cunning, incredible resilience, and even personal flaws to achieve their goals. These true stories, full of courage, ingenuity, and self-sacrifice, prove that the true strength of a female spy lies not in her attractiveness, but in her adaptability, deception, and relentless struggle. And these 10 fates, from famous to almost forgotten, have forever changed the idea of what success is in the shadow world. Perhaps no woman in the history of intelligence has become such a symbol as Mata Hari. Her name still serves as a synonym for the femme fatale seductress and spy who infiltrates the highest circles through art and sensuality. Her real name is Margaretha Gertrude Celle. She was a Dutch dancer and courtesan who achieved incredible fame in the early 20th century by pretending to be a Javanese princess who performed exotic temple dances. With the outbreak of World War I, her career began to decline, but as a citizen of a neutral country, she was free to move around Europe. This attracted the attention of the special services to her. French intelligence offered her cooperation, but, as it turned out later, she had already received money from the German side. In July 1917, she was tried for espionage in a closed military court. The prosecution claimed that she was responsible for the deaths of tens of thousands of French soldiers, but there was no direct evidence of her espionage. It is believed that the intercepted telegrams, which were used as evidence, were fabricated. The prosecutor's office used her alleged immorality as evidence of her low character. We must not forget that the trial took place at a difficult time for France, when the country needed a scapegoat to raise morale, and the spectacular dancer was ideally suited for this role. Until the very end, she maintained incredible composure, refusing to blindfold and blowing a kiss to her executioners, as eyewitnesses wrote. Her success as a spy can be considered questionable since there is no reliable evidence that she passed on any valuable information. However, her success as a symbol turned out to be colossal. Mata Hari has become the epitome of the femme fatale spy myth, and her story continues to inspire filmmakers and writers. Let's move from a tragic myth to a living legend, Nancy Wake, who is nicknamed the White Mouse by the Gestapo for her ability to elude any pursuit. This woman was born in 1912 in New Zealand, and in her youth ran away from home and became a nurse. Traveling through Europe, she witnessed the brutal Nazi persecution of the Jewish population in Vienna, which shaped her views and forced her to devote her life to the fight against evil. After marrying French industrialist Henri Fioca, she joined the resistance with him, creating routes to rescue Allied soldiers and Jewish refugees. Her elusiveness and amazing ability to elude the Gestapo earned her the nickname the White Mouse, and soon a huge 5 million franc bounty was placed on her head. Nancy Wake managed to get to England, where she was trained by the Directorate of Special Operations, and in April 1944 she was parachuted back to France. Operating in the Auvergne region, she led and coordinated the activities of more than 7,000 resistance fighters, organizing arms supplies for them. She not only planned operations, but also participated in battles with German troops herself, showing exceptional courage and composure. Her exploits have been recognized by numerous awards from Allied countries, including the George Medal from Great Britain and the Legion of Honor from France. Her ashes were scattered in the woods near Frange Castle, which served as her headquarters, which was the fulfillment of her last wish.
The story of Virginia Hall, the Lame Lady, shows how personal tragedy can become the foundation for great achievements. Virginia was born in 1906 into a wealthy family, and since her youth, she dreamed of a career as a diplomat. But a hunting accident led to the amputation of part of her left leg, which blocked her path to the diplomatic service. When the war broke out, she volunteered for the ambulance service, transporting wounded French soldiers. She was spotted by a British agent who was so impressed by her courage that he gave her the contact details of an officer from the Directorate of Special Operations. In April 1941, Virginia joined this department. Her cover was working as a reporter for the New York Post, which gave her a reason to move freely and gather information. She founded one of the most effective intelligence networks in Lyon. The Gestapo nicknamed her the Lame Lady and put her on the list of the most wanted agents. When the real hunt began for her, she had to cross the Pyrenees on foot, which was incredibly difficult for her because of the prosthesis, which she affectionately called Cuthbert. When she sent a radio message to London saying that Cuthbert was bothering her, her British colleagues, not knowing what she was talking about, replied, "If Cuthbert is causing trouble, eliminate him." This dark and ironic phrase has gone down in the history of intelligence as a symbol of tough humor and pragmatism. Virginia Hall was the only female civilian to be awarded the Distinguished Service Cross during World War II. The story of Nur Inayat Khan is an example of incredible self-sacrifice and fortitude.
She was born in Moscow in 1914 into an aristocratic Sufi family and was a talented musician and author of children's fairy tales. When the Nazis invaded France, where she lived with her family, Noor fled to England and joined the Women's Auxiliary Air Force, where she showed outstanding skills as a radio operator. In the Directorate of Special Operations, where she was then recruited, doubts arose about her suitability for field work because she was a quiet and sensitive person. But her impeccable knowledge of French and exceptional communication skills played a crucial role. In June 1943, she became the first female radio operator sent from England to occupied France. For 4 months, she skillfully hid from the Gestapo, changing shelters and avoiding pursuit, becoming the only contact who could keep in touch with London. In October 1943, she was captured. She was held in solitary confinement for 10 months, tortured and starved, but she never revealed any information, not even her real name. In September 1944, she was shot at the Dachau concentration camp. Her last word before her death was reportedly freedom. Noor Inayat Khan was posthumously awarded the British George Cross and the French Croix de Guerre. Let's move on to Christiane Granville, who has shown that intelligence and masterly bluff can be no less effective weapons than physical strength. Maria Krystyna Janina Skarbek, known by her operative name, was born in Warsaw in 1908 into an aristocratic family. Her upbringing was unusual. She spent a lot of time outdoors, riding horses and mastering weapons. The German invasion of Poland in 1939 found her in South Africa, but she immediately went to London to fight for her homeland. Her recruitment into British intelligence was the result of an audacious plan to sneak into neutral Hungary and enter occupied Poland on skis. Her most famous feat was saving her commander and 2 other agents from prison. She didn't use force, but rather theatrics and persuasion. She entered the Gestapo headquarters and, posing as a British agent, convinced a high-ranking officer to release the prisoners, threatening that he would be hanged for war crimes since an Allied invasion was imminent. This masterly bluff, backed up by a 2 million franc bribe, allowed the agents to be released. After the war, she was dismissed from intelligence and, despite her heroic record, could not find a permanent job. The same qualities that made her a wartime legend, her audacity, willingness to take risks, and ability to thrive in chaos, made her unsuited to the mundane and routine of peacetime. She was killed in 1952 by a stalker possessed by her. If Mata Hari used her fame, then Josephine Baker used it as a shield. This famous singer and dancer, born in St. Louis in 1906, escaped from racism in the United States, becoming a cultural icon in Paris. When World War II began, she offered her services to French intelligence, earning the nickname the Siren of the Resistance. Baker used her status not just as a cover, but as her main espionage tool. She boldly said, "Who dares to search Josephine Baker?" She gathered intelligence at parties and diplomatic receptions, and then secretly passed it on, writing the information on her hands or on sheet music in invisible ink. For her exploits, she was awarded the Military Cross and the title of Chevalier of the Legion of Honor. Then we will be transported to a completely different era to talk about Harriet Tubman, a woman whose name has become synonymous with freedom. Harriet, who was born into slavery around the year 1822, escaped to the north, but returned again and again to take more than 70 people along the Underground Railroad, and allegedly never lost a single passenger. With the outbreak of the Civil War, she became a spy and scout for the Union Army. In June 1863, Harriet Tubman made history as the first woman to lead a military expedition in the United States, organizing a raid on the Combahee River. She commanded a detachment that freed more than 750 enslaved people and destroyed Confederate supply depots. This audacious act showed her strategic genius and became an important part of her legacy, which includes not only her work as a guide, but also her role as an intelligence master and liberator. The story of Julia Child, the famous American chef, proves that you can become a spy in the most unexpected ways. Before she became known worldwide for her cookbooks and TV shows, Julia worked for the Office of Strategic Services. She wanted to serve in the Army, but she was rejected because of her height. She was over 6 feet tall. However, she wasn't too tall to work in intelligence. She began her career with a routine job, printing tens of thousands of cards to keep track of officers, but she was soon reassigned to a more responsible position. Julia Child worked on a secret project to develop a shark repellent to prevent underwater mine explosions, and even received an award for her work. Her story shows that espionage is not always about chases and shootouts. Sometimes it's a shadow job that requires intelligence and ingenuity. Then we will move on to one of the most controversial cases in history, the case of Ethel Rosenberg, whose fate is still a matter of debate.
Ethel and her husband Julius were executed for espionage in June of 1953 at the height of the Cold War. They were accused of passing atomic secrets to the Soviet Union. The case was highly controversial, and many, including scientist Albert Einstein, called for a pardon. The prosecution's star witness was Ethel's brother, David Greenglass, who was believed to have confessed to lying under oath to protect his wife. Moreover, recently declassified documents show that although Ethel knew about her husband's activities, she did not participate in the intelligence work herself. Her story is a tragic reminder of how fear and the political climate can affect justice. And finally, there is a story that shows that success in espionage can lie in the ability to remain unnoticed for many decades. Melita Norwood was the longest-serving British spy in the history of the KGB. Born in 1912, she led a completely unremarkable life, working as a secretary at the British Non-Ferrous Metals Research Association. This boring place was part of a secret project to develop nuclear weapons. Melita, being an ideological communist, secretly photographed documents in her boss's safe and transferred them to Moscow. Her actions were not motivated by money. She refused financial compensation, believing that she was helping the Soviet Union keep up with other countries in the arms race to prevent World War III. Her exposure occurred only in 1999, when former KGB archivist Vasily Mitrokhin published his notes. Melita herself calmly confessed her actions and stated that she would do the same thing again. Her story is a prime example of ideological espionage, where inconspicuousness turned out to be an ideal cover. These 10 women, each in their own way, defied stereotypes and demonstrated that success in espionage does not have one universal recipe. From Hollywood legend Mata Hari, whose fame outlived her tragic fate, to humble housewife Melita Norwood, who remained in the shadows for 40 years, from fearless war heroines like Nancy Wake and Virginia Hall, to spiritual and cultural figures like Noor Inayat Khan and Josephine Baker, who used their unique position to fight for their beliefs. From liberator Harriet Tubman and inventor Julia Child to tragic figure Ethel Rosenberg, their legacy is not just a list of exploits, but an intricate tapestry of courage, ingenuity, faith, and sacrifice. They proved that in the world of espionage, true strength lies not in physical superiority, but in an indomitable will and willingness to go to the end.
In a world of espionage where every step can be the last and every mistake fatal, the female trail is as deep and significant as the male one. However, popular culture often presents female agents as a cross between the femme fatale seductress from films like Salt or Red Sparrow and the cartoonishly awkward Miss Congeniality. Their images, as a rule, combine external attractiveness, well-honed mastery of martial arts, and exceptional seduction skills. But if you put aside the Hollywood gloss and immerse yourself in real historical archives, it becomes clear that the stories of real spies are much more complex, dramatic, and sometimes tragic than any scenario. Their success was determined not so much by their outward showmanship as by their sharp wit, incredible resilience, and willingness to make any sacrifice for the sake of their beliefs. They didn't just complete tasks, they changed the course of history, becoming legends whose names still evoke both admiration and awe. And these true destinies, full of courage and self-sacrifice, turn out to be much more fascinating and exciting than any, even the most action-packed action movie.